This one's pretty funny. We're going to look at something here. Charlamagne the God was on The View, and he's calling out Joe Biden choosing to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. You guys know how I feel about that. I told you I thought that was ridiculous. I get it. That's his son, etc. But I said it was very hypocritical for the Democratic Party to do that, considering that they, pointed fingers at Trump when he decided to pardon certain people as well. I also said, if anything, Joe Biden should have been pardoning people that were victims of his crime bill. That's what he should have been doing. And he's been in office for 4 years, so he easily could have gotten that shit done. So there's that. But now it seems like even Charlamagne, who is definitely, pro-Democrat, was rooting for Kamala Harris, was not fond of Biden being the nominee and criticized him, but at the same time said he would still vote for him because he's not going to vote for Donald Trump. He went on to The View recently and pushed back against the women on The View about that particular issue, the pardon issue. And I want you to hear how this conversation went. Let's dive in here.
Charlamagne the God has been a vocal force in the media throughout the 2024 presidential race, and he's joining us now at the table. Please welcome back the author of the book, Get Honest or Die Lying, Charlamagne the God.
Hello, ladies.
Hello. Nice to have you back.
Thank you for having me back.
Okay, so my question is, after the election, you said that you were disappointed but optimistic. How are you feeling right now?
I feel the same way because, what's the other option?
Right.
I'm a country boy from Moncks Corner, South Carolina, raised on a dirt road. So, my mother was a Jehovah's Witness, my grandmother was a Baptist. So I still believe in this higher power called God.
Yeah.
And, you can't believe in God when, things go your way and not believe in God when things don't go your way. So at a time like this, you just got to remember your serenity prayer, which is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because you can't change nothing.
I love that. Yeah.
First of all, I want to point out that title there of his book, which is basically a play on words from 50 Cent's album, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's interesting to me. He's like, get honest or die lying or whatever. You ain't being honest either, bro. You're not being honest either. And I think we can all see that. I pointed out before that Charlamagne is one that you need to keep an eye on because, again, I remember when Charlamagne was on the radio in Columbia, South Carolina, when I was a student at the University of South Carolina. So I know when he's part of local radio. And I remember when he left and he went to go do the Wendy Williams show back when Wendy Williams was still on the radio. So I remember old school Charlamagne the God, right? And what's interesting to me is we have to ask this question. How did Charlamagne get to where he is so swiftly? And this is not to say that he didn't put in the work, but most people I know, and you guys, I told you there's people that they pick out. Most people that I know that have dropped out of high school, and this I'm not shaming on high school dropouts. There are people in my family that dropped out of high school, so don't take this the wrong way. But most people that I know that have dropped out of high school, they don't get those types of opportunities just handed to them. Charlamagne has been handed multiple opportunities. He's written multiple books. He gets to go into corporate media over and over and over again. So Charlamagne is one that I see that is a tool that the establishment uses and the Democratic Party also uses to try to get Black people in line. And I say that because The Breakfast Club, the show, The Breakfast Club, has a majority Black audience, right? It's a hip hop show that talks also a little bit about politics, but they become more politically heavily as we get into the election. And they'll interview like presidents and all that kind of stuff and presidential candidates at the same time. But it's a hip hop culture show. And a number of times people will ask, like, how is it that all of these people on The Breakfast Club, how is it that they get to have these conversations, these political discussions with people when they don't have the political expertise? But there's people who do have the political expertise and they can't get an interview with any of those people. So again, remember, when it comes to access, a lot of times people are willing to talk to those that are not going to push back on them too much, or they're willing to talk to those that they think don't know too much about the system or about what they're doing, and they can get by. So keep that in mind. Now let's get to the Joe Biden part.
Especially the wisdom to know the difference, right?
We can't change anything.
Can't.
Not
yet.
Well, 4 years from now, I guess.
Or two.
You never know.
But let me ask you this: like Trump's campaign ads for some, they're saying they were very effective, and in one in particular ad, he used a clip of you from the Breakfast Club saying, "quote Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners." You say that line was taken out of context. I know it was, but it went on to become one of his most effective campaign ads. I'm also featured in one of his campaign ads.
Yeah. You might have been 1 and 2.
Yeah, I was. He texted me and
Yours was
let me know that.
Context.
No. No, it wasn't. But
Wow.
what were you actually saying in the clip? And can you please explain that? And how does it make you feel that the campaign used you like that?
Well, it's never good to be taken out of context, but I was I was explaining to my listeners how effective I thought the actual ad was. Like, the ad was effective before I was in it. I was just sitting at home watching football, and I saw it, and I was like, whoa. And so I knew the immediate reaction was going to be, people are going to say, hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that. So I was explaining that to my listeners. So, it never feels good to be taken out of context, but what I didn't like the most was that they didn't do anything to combat it. Right. I would have ran the same ad and just said, Donald Trump, what is it? Donald Trump supports, what is it? What was it?
He was the one that was supporting tax.
Yes, Donald Trump supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners. I would have ran the same ad because it was legislation under him as well. And you know what else I would have did if I was our campaign? Since Donald Trump used me, I would have used Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. Joe Rogan said he thought Donald Trump was, I think, unhinged was the quote.
Right.
You got to mix it up. You got to get dirty with these people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to muddy the waters a little bit, cause confusion.
Yeah. Let me ask you something that's going on.
So this is another example where they're going to Charlamagne the God for political expertise, right? So notice how you don't see them going to other people in independent media for political expertise. People who have been doing this for years, not even me, because I haven't been doing this as long, but I'm talking about people who have been doing this for like 8, 9, 10 years. Notice you don't see them going to those people. They go to Charlamagne the God, who hosts a hip hop show.
Around right now, a lot of this conversation about President Biden getting criticized from both sides of the aisle for pardoning his son Hunter after repeatedly saying he would never do it. And a lot of people are saying that it's hypocritical, etc., as if the other side doesn't do it. But what's your reaction to it?
I think all of the criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time. And, they act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy and they were saying that, nobody's above the law, but they were speaking about him, that's what they were running on. So when he kept saying things like, nobody's above the law, I respect, the jury's decision in regards to my son, he didn't believe that. But he didn't have to volunteer that lie to begin with.
I'm going to stop you.
So I agree with that part there. I do agree with this part where he said Joe Biden didn't even have to give any response to that. He really didn't. Sometimes sometimes no response is a response and you don't have to answer every question, and then people wouldn't have been able to say, oh, well, you lied. Now I can still point to him and say, you should have pardoned the victims of the crime bill. You've had 4 years in office to do that. I could still say that, but I agree with him with that point there. Now watch this.
For a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed
You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a sudden?
I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over. And this is just my feeling, because at some point you get to the place where you just go, so I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault.
When did Joe Biden follow the straight and narrow? When did Joe Biden follow the straight and narrow? Was it when he lied about marching with civil rights leaders? Was it when he was buddy with Strom Thurmond and Byrd, those racist mofos down south? Was that him following the straight and narrow? Was it when he said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle? Was it when he allegedly assaulted Tara Reid? They keep trying to paint this picture of Joe Biden as though he never did anything wrong, as if he's perfect. Nobody's perfect. We've all done things that are wrong and things that we may not be proud of. But the image that they're trying to paint of him, it's almost as if they're trying to prevent Joe Biden from having a tainted legacy. And based on the poll that I just saw today, the majority of voters voted and said that Joe Biden is the worst president in history. So this is the View's job, to come in and to do damage control. Now, here's Charlamagne. He feels a little bit of pressure. So he's like, wait a minute.
Because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground. Listen, they don't have to do that.
I'm a Democrat. Tell me what the moral high ground is.
The moral high ground is nobody's above the law. I respect what the jurors are saying. He don't have to do that.
So we're mad at him because he changed his.
Oh, no. By the way, I'm not mad at him pardoning Hunter Biden.
But you sound like you're
mad. No.
If I can get in on this, I actually think it.
So does everybody see what's happening here? The game that's being played? So see, this is what Charlamagne the God does. He'll push back a little bit, but the moment you start calling names like Whoopi Dibs, like, well, Joe Biden, oh, no, I'm not mad that he pardoned Hunter Biden. See, he's only willing to go but so far. That's why you'll always see him as a mouthpiece. That's why people like him and Angela Rye's out there crying somewhere probably. I saw that other video. That's why they will always be invited into those spaces, because they'll push back, but they'll never push back the way that I will. Like, they'll never come up there and say, leave the Democratic Party. It's corrupt. You guys need to go start your own party. We need to start a third party movement. They'll never do that. He'll say on the Breakfast Club when Jill Stein was there, I would like more options, but he'll still tell you to support the Democratic Party. Anytime Joe Biden sat there right in front of his face and told him, you got to figure out, listen, Jack, if you got to figure out if you're going to vote for me or Donald Trump, then you ain't black. The fact that he sat right there and Joe Biden said that mess to his face, I don't give a damn, presidential candidate or not. The fact that he sat right there and said that right to you, and you didn't even know you didn't really want to push back. That right there told you guys and showed you who Charlamagne really was. He's only going to push a little bit so that he can still maintain access, even if that means even throwing the black community under the bus. Because how you let that man sit there and say that to your face? And you have no pushback.
Went further, and this is one thing we really disagree on. Joe Biden made a point of saying we stand by our institutions and the impartiality of the Department of Justice.
Yes.
Democrats ran on that. The same DOJ indicted Hunter Biden. How we shouldn't be saying it's corrupt like Donald Trump does. But then in his statement pardoning Hunter Biden, he says that it was a political pursuit by his own Department of Justice.
Can you explain to me why it is that when Joe Biden does something, everybody clutches their pearls? He's wrong.
Nobody
he lied.
Criticized Donald Trump more than me or Charlamagne.
Probably because the hypocrisy, Whoopi, and also because you yourself just sat right there and tried to make it seem like you said he's straight and narrow. So you can't sit up there and say he's straight and narrow, and then you say, well, Joe Biden does something, then that means he's not straight and narrow.
I'm sorry. Yeah, people have criticized him more. I've criticized him more. We've all criticized him more, but you're missing my question.
Okay.
My question is, what is it that makes people flip out with Joe, but we don't have the same kind of thing?
Well, I don't think people are flipping out with Joe. I think Democrats are flipping out with Joe because Democrats believe that they don't represent what he's currently representing. But that's just not true. That's why I say they stand on this moral high ground that simply does not exist. And I think this is also the problem when we pick sides, right? We've turned political parties into teams. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. Ain't nobody more delusional than me, right? Okay? I feel like we're going to the Super Bowl every year, but I'm not delusional. Well, no, that is delusional. But when it comes...
No, he right about that one. I got to chime in for a second. He right about that one. Listen, Cowboys fans really do think they go into the Super Bowl every year. I told you guys, I love football. I've loved football for years. I love it, but I can't stand a Dallas Cowboy fan. I can't. They'll come in, and when I used to work at the sports bar, they would come in and they would start stomping and say, stomping with the big dogs. We going to Super Bowl. Cowboys going to Super Bowl. We going to Super Bowl next year. Woo! I used to hear that over and over again, and they're not going to the Super Bowl. Stop. So finally that meme came out where it was Morpheus from the Matrix, and it said, what if I told you nobody cares about those Super Bowls that the Cowboys won 20 years ago? And it was perfect. It was like music to my ears. I said, this is what I'm just going to show them from now on.
But when it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, right, if you say you're a Democrat, if you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything.
That's why I'm an independent.
Yes, but
I think that's the best way to go.
But that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
But why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? And why can't Republicans say when Republicans are wrong?
I'll tell you when Democrats are
wrong. So you don't think Joe Biden is wrong?
No, I don't. And can I just point this out to you?
She doesn't say they're wrong. She don't say they're wrong. He said, why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? See, they got two different shows. See, the Breakfast Club, again, a hip hop culture show. The View, it's supposed to be like this morning. Well, it's turned into the political View over the years, but this morning daytime show, and they interview a lot of these politicians, like basically on the regular. It didn't always used to be that way, more so than the Breakfast Club does. The Breakfast Club will interview the presidential candidates, but the View will have the presidential candidates and also other politicians come on the show throughout the year, whether it's an election or not. And they still want to maintain access. So they can't go too hard on Joe Biden, or Joe Biden may say, fuck the View. I'm not coming on. Where's Corn Pop? They can't go too hard at Kamala Harris because she might turn around and say, and I was smoking weed with Tupac back in the day. I used to do a little smoky, but I'm not coming on the View. So they can't go too hard at them. That's the thing, because they still want that access. That's what it's really about. But Charlamagne knows that.
The president has a pardon power, right?
I didn't say you were ridiculous, Ms. Goldberg. I would never. I said that. I just think that's ridiculous.
Think about it this way. Just very quickly, can you reframe it in this way and think about it maybe in this way? The president has the ultimate pardon power. Every president has done this, right? Yeah. And so people are saying is that Joe Biden is now a liar, as opposed to Joe Biden is someone who now knows that the person that is going to be in the White House is on a revenge tour and his son is on an enemies list. And so he is using his rightful political power to pardon his son. Now, is that a lie, or is that perhaps being pragmatic, having a change of opinion, as opposed to the president-elect who has lied almost 40,000 times during his first term?
Well, I can't.
So notice you got the prosecutor, Sonny, who was a prosecutor, trying to change the definition of a lie.
Say what it is, because I'm not in
the moral high ground. Like, what's the faux outrage?
Neither one of them have the moral high ground. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. But when you are a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, you refuse to be objective about the other party. Like, it's like we're watching them do something wrong, but we're making excuses for it. We watch Republicans do things wrong, and they make excuses for it. Why can't we just all be objective and call it what it is?
Because it's not balanced.
Because that's not what they're paid to do. And Charlamagne knows that. They're not paid to be balanced. They're not paid to say those kind of things about them. And he knows that. And that's just kind of really what it is. Yet here he comes here. See, now he's got to defend the Democrats. So he comes in here and talks about, he applauds them for reaching across the aisle. Watch that.
Your book, which is fabulous, you were on here for it and we all read it, Get Honest or Die Lying, is a lot about how we need to have meaningful conversations with people we disagree with. That's kind of your MO. And recently you went on Nikki Haley's podcast, who you don't agree with on everything. You agree with her on some things, others you don't. And you've said that people like Nikki Haley and Gavin Newsom, who very likely may run for president in the future, are doing something that all candidates should be doing. What do you mean by that?
Well, 2028 is going to be another presidential election, and I think everybody needs to start campaigning now. And the way they start campaigning now is by making real connections with people, right? I think, Gavin Newsom.
Why are they taking Charlamagne's advice on how to campaign? Charlamagne has not run for office. He's not worked on campaigns to my knowledge. So why are they taking Charlamagne's advice on political campaigns? Am I alone in this? Am I losing it?
He's been doing a phenomenal job in the media because he goes on Fox News. He did the debate with Ron DeSantis. He has his own podcast, Politicking, with Marshawn Lynch, and everything he does, he's able to make a story. Like, I think last week he was in California, in the counties that flipped red for Trump, and he was just down there speaking to them, and that became news. And I think when you have your own podcast and when you're not afraid to go in so-called enemy territory, you make a real connection with people. And it's the same thing with somebody like Nikki Haley. She got a radio show right now, so now she's able to engage this audience every single week.
You know,
right?
he's really good at that. Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, Pete is
phenomenal.
Peter's a politician who comes to Breakfast Club when he doesn't need us.
Yeah.
He comes to Breakfast Club just to make a connection with people. He'll be there next week, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, so look at that. He'll be there next week. Let's not bring up the fact that, see what they trying to push, the Pete Buttigieg idea? Let's not bring up the fact that black people don't like Pete. Let's not bring up the fact that when he ran for president in 2020, his support among black voters was very, very low. If I remember correctly, he was at the bottom of the list. Let's not bring that up, though, because he's coming on a show next week.
Yeah, he's coming next week.
Great.
But that's what I mean. Like, people have to start making real connections with folks. Like, we talked about everybody going on the podcast, like Trump going on all the podcasts this election season. What's the next level of that? People having their own podcast. Everybody else is controlling their own narrative, so why wouldn't politicians? Athletes got their own podcast. Entertainers, comedians. Why shouldn't politicians?
Absolutely.
So everybody who wants to run in 2028, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you better start a podcast or get some type of radio show to make a real connection with people.
So this is another point that I want to bring up about Charlamagne not being aware. There's a number of politicians that have a podcast. There's a number of politicians that already have podcasts. You can find them on YouTube. Even Bernie did the podcast. Remember Bernie was doing the fireside chats? AOC has a podcast. There's a number of them. Google it, you can find it. This is, again, not being aware.
Now it's, you remember, Obama reached out to people through the internet. Now the new evolution is the podcast.
That's right.
Well, Charlamagne, you were a hot topic for us a few weeks ago after you were on CNN with Anderson Cooper and called out cable news networks for normalizing Trump. Now that Trump has won, you say that you don't think cable news will ever truly cover him honestly again. Why?
Not even just cable news, no network. Nobody, because they didn't do it before, so why would they do it now? They're scared to death. He's the president of the United States of America.
Have you watched The View?
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. Sonny, I saw you have to apologize a couple times last week, so somebody's coming with some notes from downstairs.
I'm not apologizing.
Okay.
I'm making a legal note as an attorney of law.
Because you know we have a petty president, our incoming, that is going to be very litigious.
Who is litigious, but that doesn't mean that's not a
we
mistake.
check ourselves.
But what does not normalizing him look like? Does that mean, because oftentimes the dilemma for me is to just not put him anywhere? Is that the
No, I don't
what is the not normalizing?
I think you should just honestly call it how you see it. Like, for example, right?
And have legal notes.
Yes, but like.
But the reality is, again, mainstream media, corporate media has been calling it like they see it with Donald Trump, with the exception of Fox News, which is, right wing. The left wing corporate channels have been doing that. I never understood when he said this. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? These people still got Trump derangement syndrome from 2016. They never stopped talking about this guy. If I hear someone bring up January 6th again, I think I'm gonna jump out a window. I don't know. I was tired of it. I told people this over and over again. Most everyday people are not thinking about January 6th. People come to you and say, oh my God, weren't you afraid? Hell no, I live in Boston. Like, what? Why are you asking me this stuff? But weren't you terrified for our nation? Because people were running up steps and running through doors. I live in the Boston area. I've seen people do worse after the Red Sox won the World Series. I've seen people do worse when the Patriots win multiple Super Bowls. I've seen people climb up poles, flip cars. I've seen much worse. So for me, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. That's wild that it's happening there, but bougie people were scared. And the DC people. But I just can't. I can't do this anymore. I can't do the whole, don't bring this up to me again. Can't do it. Yes, EMK, pole climbers. If you guys look up the videos on YouTube, you can see them too. Look up the videos of crowds after the Boston Red Sox won the World Series. And we've won quite a number since I moved here. I'm not kidding. People climbing up poles. You know, in Philadelphia, they had to grease the poles, and they did that so people would not climb up the poles if the Eagles were to win. I remember this too. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You go out to the street, you got to live in one of these sports towns, and you'll see people get a little cray-cray. So when you see people flip cars over sports games, that's just kind of how I feel about it. But I think we're going to finish up right about here.
When I called Donald Trump a fascist, I wasn't calling him that because of something I heard Democrats say. I was calling him that because of the things that were coming out of his mouth. Yeah. Right? When he was saying things like, he wants to suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election, right? Yeah. So I'm saying that. But now, when you have elected officials also saying that, but then all of a sudden when he's president, that just goes away.
Disappears.
But it didn't go away. They kept bringing up that Donald Trump was a fascist. What's really interesting is that Charlamagne the God doesn't see the elements of fascism that have also been, implemented by the Democratic Party. We've been talking about censorship and free speech on this show since how long? You saw what happened with Twitter. You see what's happening right now with TikTok. But all of a sudden, when it comes to that issue, there's no fascism with the Democratic Party. It's only with Donald Trump and Orange Man bad. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. Charlamagne the God. Am I pointing the right way? Where am I pointing? This way. Charlamagne the God is a tool that the establishment uses and that corporate media uses as an illusion of someone to represent what they think that Black people want. Hell, if you would have listened to Charlamagne the God, you would have thought Kamala Harris was really going to nail this election. If you would have listened to Charlamagne the God, you would have thought that Kamala Harris had one hell of a chance and Black people really wanted to support her. So he is there as a tool. And people need to start asking these questions. And I've been pointing this out a couple times on the show. Pay attention to, in particular, Black people that the establishment uses as tools to spread their message. Now they've made their way to urban hip hop. They've made their way to the urban podcasts, the hip hop podcasts, to spread the message because they said, let's reach Black people that listen to this. Oh, Black people may not be watching CNN and MSNBC. Let's get the younger Black people. They're listening to The Breakfast Club. Next thing you know, it'll be Club Shay Shay. Then it'll be Joe Budden's podcast. And this is what they'll do. So they'll just keep moving their way around to try to reach, in particular, Black people, and try to get you to come out and support the Democratic Party. And that didn't work this time. I mean, even Kamala went on to Club Shay Shay and people still weren't feeling her like that. Black people weren't feeling her like that. You see, she lost the Black vote. Not feeling her like that. And this is a good example. TT Lay said, yep, but they're not good at it. No, they're not. They are not. Well said there. But just remember that Charlamagne, he's a tool of the establishment. Keep that in mind. And you'll see as time goes by, pay attention next year, pay attention 2025. You'll see as time goes by, watch and see who tries to align theirself with the Charlamagnes. Watch and see who in so-called independent media, and we didn't have this conversation already, the people who try to align theirself with the Charlamagnes. Watch. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.